Hi there. Ah, happy Moon Day. Happy Monday. I'm not sure when the last time I made a video was. If you're watching this, I'm writing this for you because you're on my newsletter. I'm recording this for you because you're on my newsletter. And I wrote a newsletter a long time ago that said why I broke up with astrology. And I said, I promise I'm going to tell you. And I never wrote it out because it's multi-layered, and honestly, I was still figuring things out. So, much like my relationship with, like, being online and stuff. So, hi, welcome. It's so good to not see you, but I'm so excited to be recording, because I think I've really missed making videos as I slam the coffee. It's 11 AM, I probably shouldn't be drinking coffee anymore, but, here we are. So, just a tiny rant. Like, I struggle with technology, and I always have, and I loved being able to be on Facebook when I was creating videos, and love writing, like love to get to do the newsletter when I do, and just been more inspired to just legitimately do those things. When I first got into that stuff, it was actually because I had a passion for, Instagram. I love taking photos, love like photojournalism, I guess, style stuff. Love sharing story, love video, love audio. So, you may or may not know, like in 2021, January of, I just took a quick off social media, and I just never went back. And I really needed that break. But it was hard because I love creating, right? So kind of went in. It was a very insular, like, go in, do this thing. So during the time, lots have changed. So I wanted to share with you, because some people have actually written to me and said, "Hey, like, you never followed up on that. Like, what was up with that?" And so this morning I decided today's the day I'm just gonna, like, share the video because I've got so many thoughts on this, and I'm sharing it because I think it might be helpful for you, or maybe somebody you know, or I don't know. And was cursing at my mildly, because I kind of gave up cursing like a while ago, but like not very good at it because I'm from like the New York, New Jersey border, and it still comes out and it's fine. But I couldn't figure out how to make a video because it's been so long. I'm like, why is it so complicated? Anyway, it was a journey getting here. So anyway, thank you for, like, dealing with my mini rant. But I'm so happy to figure it out. It's just a button in the corner of the screen. Who knew? I didn't. Now I do. So I kind of wrote some notes down because there are some things I want to talk about. But we've worked together before, or if we got to share space, like through Instagram or Facebook, potentially here. You probably know astrology has been a huge part of my life. Like, as soon as I could read, I was picking up books about astrology. My aunt had many just intriguing books on her bookshelf for me as a child. And I remember sitting on the floor, and there was this one shelf she had, and she always had tons of plants, lots of chimes, just a beautiful home. Like, I feel like her aesthetic definitely, what I found beautiful, like, I definitely took on a lot of her aesthetic. She kind of honestly, like, introduced me to herbal medicine, all these things, so much of, I feel like, what I ended up following in my life. So very highly influential. And I read a lot about astrology as a kid. And the thing I love the most about astrology, and I'm not sure about you, like, I'd kind of be curious what you love most about it if you do love it. Um, my favorite things have been the sheer feeling of being seen and heard and understood, for better or for worse. Um, when you look at somebody's personal chart. And I remember at a young age reading things and going, yeah, I do have a tendency towards that. Like, maybe I can work on that. Or over time, working with people and the more complex layers, because it's complex as a thing. It's very complex and nuanced. Astrology and the concept of it. And so as you go deeper into the layers, you start to realize, like, it's very personal and individual for each person. And I just think when I felt so grateful to get to integrate it into my work with people, the parts I loved, that's the parts I loved. The parts I did not love is when people would try to come to me for, like, future predicting or transits and stuff like that, because I have a mixed relationship with all that, you know? And so, and growing up loving astrology and always believing in it, and growing up having experiences where synchronicities were just a normal part of life, Um, we all have a capacity to be intuitive. I think that it's whether it's fostered or not. I think that maybe kind of like sports and stuff, some people are naturally athletic, some people are naturally empathic. It's just the beauty of the diversity and complexity and patterns of human beings, right? And so something great about astrology is archetypes and how it kind of points to those pieces. And I kind of got to a point where I'm organizing my little duckies. My best friend sent me these really cute glow in the dark duckies. And I have them on a piece of agate that it's Kentucky agate that I, hey, Lauren, if you're watching this, little ducks. She reminds me to get my ducks in a row. Um, yeah, they glow in the dark. Pretty amazing. Anyway, I keep them on my desk. Along with my wonderful friend Joy sent me this little knit heart, little heart people. Yes, I try to keep my friends up at my desk because they're my best inspiration and they're my best encouragers. So anyway, where was I? Astrology, archetypes, and the complexity. Okay, so growing up, I always believed in it, but I had a lot of friends. Like nobody believed in intuition, these things growing up. But I always knew my experiences are real, and I never had like a bread box or soapbox, whatever you call it, to stand on. Like I was just like, whatever, it's okay if you don't believe me. Like I know my experiences. I know this happened. I know I saw this. I know I felt that. I know, and I never had a reason to argue about it. But I had a lot of people around me that would try to argue about it, and it was, you know, it was fine. It was definitely like maybe it felt like degrading at times, but people will be people. And what's so interesting is that several of the people that did that, because I think they really needed to be like right or something like that potentially, they ended up coming to me years later and saying, hey, I had an experience and I want to share with you because I knew you'd understand. And so time always, you know, things come to whatever, time changes us. And so hence astrology, right? With my relationship with it, which is the point, is it was my relationship with it and it was a cultural shift of it. So over the years, as you've seen, like it's become so popular. And to me, I see it, it's like the news, the way it's out there. And I'm very grateful again to have been able to use it in my practice when I did. But you may have noticed, like I took the languaging off my website. I stopped offering sessions. I was doing my new moon workshops. I stopped offering those, even though I never really like to me, the moon is just that was never something I struggled with in terms of relational stuff. But it's just like the psychology of eating, like the mind body eating, which is about your relationship with a thing. It's not to say that like all their foods are like all bad. It's your relationship with it. And so I started to look at my relationship with astrology. And I started to find myself feeling a little agitated and frustrated with the online, just the marketing, the fear-based, almost like oppressive pressure for people, whether you're an observer or a practitioner, like there's this message of almost this, like this competitive, you don't know enough, or I know more, or like it reminded me a lot of like kind of how politics were in the early 2000s, where everybody's like, oh, you didn't know about that, or like, and I was like, I just started to get very frustrated because I feel like it was tapping into a different mode that was no longer really always just about helping people, but about selling people things and about trying to get people to like tell people what they should think and what they should feel. And also feel like they weren't enough if they didn't know, kinda like the in the know, like it suddenly was like, "Oh yeah, like Mercury retrograde," or like these things, and it seemed like it started to become more about people identifying with it than it being this, like, genuinely, truly helpful thing for people, so I started to struggle myself, culturally within the realm of that, number 1. Number 2, it's complex and it's nuanced, so in the world to have put out these newscasts basically, like tons of people putting out newscasts, whether they have training or not. And I think there's a lot for intuition. There's a lot to be said for just natural wisdom and things, but like these very broad brush statements. And I just felt like it was kind of like I feel like the world of astrology has become just as much propaganda as the news. If I'm just going to be blatant about it. Because I feel like a lot of the stuff online is very shallow. It's very clickbait. Um, and I didn't like that, and I wanted to be away from it. So I had to sit with that. So that's the first thing as a practitioner. That was the one thing that just still hits heavy on my heart because I still don't like that. I don't like when people are told to feel a certain way or do certain things, that really sometimes are for a gain. And that's a complex statement, and that's my broad brush statement on that because there are lots of great practitioners and astrologers out there. And so I'm not saying like this is everything. It just is like a lot of it because a lot of that stuff sells because it simplifies it and it makes it relatable for people. And then people start making decisions based off of stuff that maybe doesn't even apply to them personally. And that's what I find problematic is it's it's kind of feeding on people's desire to have guidance. And I don't always think the guidance is coming from a place of really looking at the person and what they need. It's kind of more of like, how can I keep this person hooked to my content? So there's that. Which I think can go there's content context that can go across the board for like any industry, right? And so there's that. Then there's my personal experience, which is really what this was going to be about. So growing up with astrology, it took me a long time to look at this, but I realized that I started to kind of use it as a bit of like my family unit. It was my guide, it was my guidance. It gave me a sense of stability and security. And it made me feel like once I was asked, why why do you do astrology? Because I was in question about it. I was like, I just don't know how I feel about it. I'm kind of in this place. I'm trying to figure it out. And this is again coming from somebody for I'm 44 now, like that was like it was in 2023 I think I decided that I would set astrology on a back burner. No book burnings. I wasn't renouncing it. It was not it was just like I'm just quietly setting it on the back burner. I only had to have a few conversations at times where it was with clients who were like, I'm no longer offering this. But other than that, like I wasn't blasting it out. The first time I really brought it up is when I said, hey, this is why I broke up with it. Spoiler alert, we were just better off friends, not lovers, you know, because I found myself so like looking at astrology when somebody asked me why, my answer was so clear. And it was because I felt alone. And astrology gave me a sense of love and security and like again guidance, and it made me feel like I could be at the top of this mountain, which I love hiking. I love being in that space of clarity, and like sweating and the smell of the air and like the freshness and seeing vultures and hawks and stuff fly through the air and running into like some strange velvety beetle or something. It's like the connection, the level of connection. So when I say the top of a mountain, I don't mean like I've climbed the mountain and here's my flag. No, my concept of the top of the mountain is presence and slowness and walking up a place. And then like, it's the whole purpose of Savor the Weeds, the radio show, right? Which was the Facebook channel, which turned into a radio show because I was trying to get off media and social screens. And I think what's happening is I'm bringing it back to YouTube, this is kind of like maybe step one because I found the button up there. Anyway, so at the top of the mountain is a place of comfort and connection for me and a feeling of in my body and in my bones and connected to God and safety and community. So I felt like for me, astrology was that place for me where I could be there and I could kind of look off the cliffside and feel a sense of clarity and feel a sense of inner knowing and centeredness and safety. And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad place. But what I found is that my relationship with it, that I would sometimes use it, and this was new because I didn't really get into like what's like horary astrology or, for sure, New Moon Wishes. That was a part of my life from like 22, 23, whenever Jan Spiller wrote that book that I always suggest to everybody in the workshops and stuff. Since then, right? So it was one of the most life-changing things, practices. And in the long run, how I see it is, the new moon is a time of quiet in which we go inward and our relationship with God and the clarity is deepened. And so we can be in that space of wishes and prayer, meditation, whatever you want to call it. And things are clearer and beautiful things can transform with that. I mean, People that plant with the moon, if you plant plants at the new moon, I mean, you legitimately can see changes in how things can grow or sprout. So I will never break, bow, like, what is the word? Step back from that. Like, I strongly believe that. Doesn't mean it's real, but it's my personal opinion. So, but I found myself looking at some of the other pieces of how astrology can be used, which is largely about control and manipulation, I think. At least my experience, I would find myself being like, "Oh, I shouldn't send this until this time, or I shouldn't schedule this until then, or I shouldn't do this until then." And I get that, sure, maybe there's something to that, but also, I think God's bigger than that. I think God's bigger than astrology. I think God definitely made all the stuff, right? But I don't think that we need a mathematical formula to break reality. And I think that it's kind of like with technology. So I was talking to a friend and they mentioned that they did not have a phone until a certain date, which was like pretty late and awesome. We started talking about like randomly answering machines. And I thought about, it's like kind of remembering my answering machine story, which I've told before, which is in my 20s, I didn't have a phone. I had an answering machine. That was it. I didn't have a cell phone. Oh, there was a point where I didn't actually have a phone. That's right. There was a point where I didn't have a phone, period. And I remember anytime I needed to talk to somebody or anything, it would just happen. I'd walk and I'd find the person. I wasn't looking for them. It would just be God in the universe just pulling it together. It was amazing. It was an amazing experience of synchronicity and like God providing and just being in that space of we're all connected and there's a great harmony if we allow it. And I just feel like technology has been this real crux between us and that because there's no space. There's no space. I mean, if we can have it on our doorstep, then what need to have the magic in the space to be in a space of potential loss or timing before something gets there, you know? And I think the same thing, it's kind of applies to astrology too. It's like if we can control and manipulate and predict everything and put our little, you know, human hands into just prying it and like together, like, then what space is there to like have faith and be in that space of true, what we refer to as like some people refer to as like magic. And I think of it as just like dancing in the great cosmic, orchestra, and, of like the great conductor or the great composer. It's just like, and so yes, I do think there's a rhythm to it, and I do think there's reality to a lot of pieces of astrology, I do, and, um, but I think it's our relationship with it, and I got to a point where I realized my relationship with it started to become one in which I started to feel like I don't consider myself a highly controlling person. I feel like I'm pretty like, I, like, love co-creation, right? But I'm okay with the sitting back, and yet, I found myself super anxious all the time around astrology because I'm like, "Oh, I need to listen to that," or I'd kind of waste a lot of time, like, on YouTube or something, or, um, was feeling like not enough because I didn't know something, which was my own inner struggle, right? And I thought, "Why do I care? Like, why do I even care? Like, why am I feeling some sense of insecurity or anxiety or like maybe even at times like disbelief or that doesn't feel right, like that's, yeah, I don't know. And so I decided to just set it aside for a while and see what my life would be like without it because living your entire life almost using it or leaning into it. And I'm not saying like that I would say towards my latter years with it, and it became a very intimate relationship, which is why I say I broke up with astrology and we're better off friends because it took a long time. So 2023 is when I just very consciously, and prior to that, it was around January, October, January, I started to kind of just, unsubscribe or get rid of this newsletter, just slowly, just trim it back. And so it was March of 2023 that I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna set it aside. So it's been about 3 years. It'll be 3 years. Well, it wouldn't have been because it was about January this year that I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna just look at this or look at that." So here's the thing. I felt very sad. It was hard to let go. And I knew it was an experiment for me. Um, but I definitely felt like something was missing. Like I said, it was kind of like this familial friend um, sense of rhythm and security. Like it's something I could always plug into and feel that soft plush, kind of like maybe feminine, like kind of like both masculine and feminine, like the softness of feeling seen and understood, but the structure of, but there's something to this. And so there was definitely a grief, like a grieving. And I had to like really pray on it kind of for years because I knew I was trying to figure it out. I'm kind of surprised it took so long for me to land where I am. I always knew I'd come to a point of integration to my center, but it just took me a really long time to come back to center. And I remember talking to my therapist who I've had for like 12 years and talking to her about it. And she's actually, her husband's a pastor. And I didn't know this for like ever working together. And she's heard so many stories of synchronicities and mysticism and that I've experienced in life, and she never I loved it because she never once judged me, which is what I would have expected from Christianity, which I didn't realize that I had a very narrow-minded view of what Christianity was at the time, and, or could be, and so I remember talking with her about this and saying, like, "I'm gonna try this experiment, this is where I am, but I know I'm gonna come back to center, but I've gotta do it this way." It's kinda like food sensitivities, like, when I'm working with clients on food sensitivities, which is a large part of the work, um you have to kind of be a in food sensitivities, it's very helpful to be a purist about the experiment so you have true data. And I think the same thing goes for human relationships. Like if you have a human relationship where it's complex and complicated, sometimes taking space is the very thing that helps you to gain your clarity. And I think maybe for me, because it was such a deep, long life relationship that it took me 2.5, 3 years, you know? Um, But I will say I'm really happy to have found my center again, you know? And because there's a piece that does feel like home. And but I know there's that line, and it's just like anything within life. Like I do believe that I believe in polarity. So I believe that like it's important for us to see the wholeness of something. Everything has its polarity to make it whole. And also, our relationship with things is purely about our relationship with it and how we interact with it. It's not just the content of the thing, it's the context in which we're relating. Is it healthy or not? Just like with food, just like with people. But having also been in the world of like intuition and all this stuff, like I do believe in energies that are malefic and benefic. And I think it's important to be clear on what you are tapping into. And I think that another thing, the reason that I step back is I feel like there's a lot of weird stuff going on right now, and people are super hyper normalizing very weird stuff that's pretty dark. And I'm really not interested in partaking in that. And so I feel like a lot of the astrological community has done that. Like, I feel like there's a lot of control and manipulation and trying to get people to buy things and like in ways that are not helpful because it's feeding on not enoughness. Just like, for example, I don't know if you know this, but like, what's it called? Like, not helpless people, but something people. It's a book. And that somebody who worked for Facebook was in marketing with Facebook and they wrote this book. And one of the stories in this book is that in Facebook marketing, there was a meeting and these people got together. And during this meeting, something was brought up about a new tactic that was going to be used on Facebook. And the tactic was if a 11, 12, 13-year-old girl takes a selfie, posts it, and then takes it down, that they're going to send her an ad that will try to sell her something based off of her insecurity. And that woman, I believe she said something in the meeting was like, "This is so messed up." And they're like, "What?" Like, kind of like, "Yeah, but this is what's going to sell." That's just pure evil. Like, that's just freaking pure evil. And I'm like, so I'm so grateful, like to have stepped back when I did. And it's like finding, you know, but do you see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying that having a platform where people can connect and share ideas and like lift each other up and be in a good space is bad. I don't think that's like it's polarity, right? But there is darkness out there. We can't just eat up everything and think it's going to be fine. And I think that that's where I started to struggle with this community sometimes online is that I am not a fear mongering person, number one. And wake up, you know? You can't just go through this stuff blindly and expect that you're not going to get something strange attached to you and then you wonder why your life's falling apart. And so it's like finding that balance. So if you've been in a place where you're like, I don't know about my relationship with this, or like, if any of this resonates with you, I want to be another person out there that's like, you're not crazy. Like, it's not weird that there are all kinds of weird music videos where people are just like wearing strange horns and stuff. Like, it's kind of weird stuff. And like, everybody's just like, everything's fine. This is normal, right? And I'm like, this is kind of weird. And this is coming from somebody who grew up around the awareness of intuition and like the magic of like there's so much more to this than our physical forms, right? And that, like, but I think it's really important to hold on to like the light and like just be in the space of like also just allowing to yourself to be a human being. Like we don't have to ascend right now, you know, like we're in physical form for a reason. Like there are lots of lessons to learn, but like I don't wanna, like, levitate out of my body and then be, like, living in some other realm. To live here and smell things and taste things and experience these amazing experiences with other human beings, even if it's just a text from an old friend is, like, such a gift, you know? It's a huge experiment. But anyway, so those are largely my thoughts. I'm gonna look at my notes because I haven't looked at them since, but I think I covered, like, largely most of it. Yeah, I feel like that's why I stepped back from astrology. It wasn't that I think astrology is bad. It wasn't that I think that, like, it was right or wrong. It's that it wasn't right for me for that period of time, and I needed to reevaluate my relationship with it and to step back and be in a different space that because I don't wanna control and manipulate everything in my life. I wanna co-create, you know? Alarm's going off. I was about to finish the video anyway. God's like, "Stop talking." So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else, like, I feel very grateful now to be where I am in my relationship with it and knowing what pieces I wanna keep and what pieces I don't. And what I'm realizing, it's just like anything. It's just like you choose where you spend your time and your energy, and I don't want to spend my time or energy in places where it feels a little weird and off. I'm all about just, like, addressing some discord or I don't need to be in a place of comfort all the time. It's not that. It's just that if my intuition is saying, yeah, I don't know about that, like I'm going to step back from it. And that's what I had to do because it felt very like necessary and good. And I'm glad. Like I'm really grateful. Like I'm a happier person in a lot of ways. Like I'm really glad to keep like my new moon wishes and prayers. And there are times where I think, gosh, like I still don't know where I am in terms of like charts and the interpretation or how I wanna use it, if I wanna use that again with people. Um, but I love the archetypes still, always, like, which is what the whole Venus Envy show was, is, like, largely about the archetypes, and I do love that there can be some sense of synchronicity. I do think it can help us feel that sense of, like, we're all one and we're kind of this amalgamous ball of energy with tiny little things like bacteria in our body, you know, just kind of moving together and around. I love that. Um, there's so much to love, but I just had to kinda, like, you know, revamp my relationship with it, and, so I don't know if that's what was expected in terms of, like, why I work with astrology, but for anybody who was wondering, like, that's kind of what I've been going through, and I think, like, I'm happy with it. I'm happy I did the experiment. T There are times I think I wish I had it. Well, I had the experiment, but I really had to know in myself and my bones, like, how I felt about it. Um, and for me to do that, I had to step back, and anyway, I don't know if that's helpful for you or not. I'd be curious to know your thoughts. I would really hope that you can be kind in your comments because I don't know. This is my first video in a while. I don't need kindness, but like Please don't be mean. This is pretty vulnerable for me anyway. But, yeah, I'm curious if any of this resonates with you, and if it does, like, maybe it's about listening to when that those feelings come up and when they don't, and start looking at that. When do the feelings come up? When do they don't? When do they not come up? And then follow the when they don't come up, and this when those feelings come up, it's just like a toxic relationship with a person or food. It's like, maybe readjust, you know? Um, I guess that's it. Anyway, we're grateful for you, and thank you for maybe watching this. I'm sure it's way too long for you to 30:31. Let's see. End stream is down here. All right. Wishing you a beautiful day. I guess tomorrow's an eclipse, so hopefully the energy is not too intense for you. Because yeah, we can all ride the same wave together and we can definitely feel it, which is another great thing. It's like sometimes we'd be like, oh, that's where that mood came from. It's just when we take that overgeneralization and we start to apply that as if it needs to dictate our very personal things, that maybe the deeper answer is like within yourself or prayer and having that guidance, because that to me seems like a real act of faith. Um, People are talking this new saying, because I'm not been on social media. So everybody's like quantum leaping. And I'm like, that's the new thing, And I'm like, quantum leaping into reality. I'm like, that's exactly what God and prayer and like new moons and all this stuff has been doing for a long time. It's just being branded as something else. So I don't know if somebody wrote a book or where that came from, but I think it's the same concept. And I think that we don't need like some fancy tools to get there. Like, I think it can be pretty simple. Like, you don't need to build an altar. You don't need to like, I don't know. I think it's pretty simple. And I think that that's where it gets complex, is when people start making you feel like you need to have all these things, know all these things, say all these things, do all these things. Like, it's like, you're not the tap dancing peanut, you know? It's not like a show. It's a deep connection that doesn't need jazz hands as a jazz hand. You know what I'm saying? But like, it's like, yeah. So I just want you to be secure in yourself and like encourage you to deepen your relationship with your inner knowing, and not let something dictate, especially somebody's interpretation of something, because that's another thing. It's one thing to like have the thing, but also it's a lot of this is people's interpretations of things, like simplifying stuff and like probably not, may or may not be applicable to you, because this thing might be over here for somebody else, but over here for you, and over here for somebody else, and over here for somebody else. And then there's all the stuff that like interacts, the highways of information and energy. So um follow your intuition and your heart, and like take your brain with you, I think. And don't be brainwashed, people, because I feel like the whole world is just like one giant advertising agency right now, and it's exhausting. Um, so anyway, sending you lots of love. Trust yourself. Reach out if you need anything. All the things. I should be like this video and visit my whatever, but I don't know how to do that gracefully. So there you have it. All right, ending stream. Bye. Have a good day.